Well, good morning. Have we any visitors this morning? From where? Jefferson Hills. Where else? Now, I see a lot of our college kids are home. Raise your hands. Okay, anybody home from the military? Welcome. Anybody else? Rest of you are just sleeping in today, right? Today, we find ourselves in the fourth Sunday of Advent, and there's just a few days before Christmas, and I understand that there are going to be snowy days. There are going to be days when things are perhaps going to be more confusing and more stressful than usual. And so we need to, as Christians, realize that Christmas should not be about stress, that Christmas should not be about anxiety, that Christmas is supposed to be what it's supposed to be, which is joy, for God has come to earth. Now, in the first reading today, we heard from the prophet Micah. Micah wrote about 800 years before the coming of Jesus, in 800 BC, in the second part of that century. And the reason that we read this prophecy from Micah today is it is perhaps the most specific of all the Old Testament predictions of the coming of the Messiah. Not only does he tell us what he's going to do, but he tells us where he's going to be born. He says he's coming out of Bethlehem. That's specific. And we read it today because it gives us some insight into what the needs were. Micah was writing at a time when the Israelites had, in fact, lost their way. People had stopped practicing the faith. People had become cultural Jews rather than observant Jews. People wanted all the culture, They wanted the presents at Hanukkah, but they didn't want the practice of learning about God in the faith. We fall into that category ourselves, our society. We want very much to unloose the presents, but we don't really talk much about why we're doing it. So Micah places it in a context for us so that we can fully understand and grasp what the coming of the Messiah really is all about. He says, "Thus says the Lord, Bethlehem Ephratah." Now, why does it say Bethlehem Ephratah? Anybody know? It's named after an obscure tribe of Judah, the Ephratites, who were a very, very small tribe, and they lived there first. And then the city was renamed Bethlehem. And what does Bethlehem mean? Anybody know? It's very interesting. You can see you're all excited. What's the word Bethlehem mean? It means the city of bread. Now, what did Jesus become? The bread of life. Bethlehem. Of all the cities that they could have chosen, Bethlehem, the city of bread, so that the bread of life, Christ, could be born there and give nourishment to all the world. Now, the other thing that Micah does, he describes who the Messiah will be. He says, first of all, the origin is from of old, from ancient times. Therefore, the Lord will give them up until the time, then when she who is to give birth has born, and the rest of his kindred shall return to the children of Israel. So his job is to bring people back. His job to remind people who they are, to remind people of their roots, to remind them that God is their Father, that God is the only source of life. We might think we're physically strong. We might think that we're economically strong. We might think that we're pretty bright. But there is nothing we have that God didn't give us. And when we lose sight of that, when we truly begin to think that we don't need God, historically, every time a nation has fallen. When we lose sight of God, we lose sight of who we ourselves are. He describes the Messiah. He says he shall stand firm and shepherd his flock by the strength of God, in the majestic name of the Lord his God. And he will remain, for now his greatness shall reach to the ends of the earth. He shall be peace. Now, my friends, today we have 4 or 5 days before Christmas, 4 or 5 days before we gather here again, along with thousands of others who we don't recognize a lot.